Da-da-da-da-da! No! Do we have a JP subtitle? We do! Let's go! Head spinner!
He's gonna take you back to the past to play the shitty games that suck ass. He'd rather have a buffalo take a diarrhea dump in his ear. He'd rather eat the rotten asshole of a roadkill skunk and down it with beer. He's the angriest gamer you've ever heard. He's the angry Nintendo nerd. He's the angry Atari Sega nerd. He's the angry video game nerd.
Here's a story of a little thing that went a long way. It's the Nintendo Game Boy. While not the first portable game console, it was the first to make such a big impact. It was hugely successful. There were some amazing exclusive games like Link's Awakening, which alone made it worth it, but lots of the games were just poor versions of NES titles and shameful, watered-down arcade games. It didn't matter how compromised they were. As long as they could fit on a Game Boy cartridge, why not? The only reason to own Street Fighter II on Game Boy would be to play it on a trip or something. But what about when you're at home? You better own the console version too, because if all you had was this, oh man. None of these inferiorities hampered the Game Boy's success, nor did the monochrome graphics. A lot of people say the Game Boy's in black and white, but really, it's more like 4 ugly shades of green. The screen has no light, so if you try to play it in the dark, you'll see nothing. You'd think it made a big sensation only because of the novelty of it being portable and that it would soon fade away once the next thing would come along. But no, that didn't happen. And the competition was fierce. There was the Sega Game Gear, the Atari Lynx, amongst others. They all had color and lighted screens, but that scrappy little Game Boy kicked all their asses. It came out in '89 and wasn't discontinued until 2003. During its lifespan, there was Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, and even GameCube hit the scene before this gray brick with puke-colored graphics finally died out. Also, as famously shown in Nintendo Power, a soldier in the Gulf War had a Game Boy that survived a bomb blast. Even though it was burnt black, it still powered on. You can't stop the Game Boy. They were released in different colors, like black, red, and yellow. They even made one transparent. Nintendo Power made stickers, which are still on my only working Game Boy. Then there was the carrying case, which looked like a giant Game Boy. A whole lineage was started, including the Game Boy Color, the Game Boy Advance SP, which evolved into the DS and 3DS. But it's impressive how long the original Game Boy stuck around. And naturally, during that time, lots of add-ons were made for it, mostly by third parties. These ranged from practical to flat-out ridiculous. And that's what I want to focus on here. The point is, the Game Boy was a long-lived success, and here's the accessories that probably had nothing to do with it. The Super Game Boy was perhaps the most useful, though it's technically a Super Nintendo add-on, an adapter to play Game Boy games on your TV, colorized with lots of color presets and the option to mix your own color combinations. There's border graphics and the ability to draw all over it. A total time waster, but how could you resist? Certain games were specifically made for the Super Game Boy with their own color design and borders. But onto the Game Boy. The first thing that comes to mind is the link cable. It's just a simple way to connect 2 Game Boys so 2 players could compete in Tetris, for example. But then there's the 4-player adapter. It sounds cool, but you need 4 people, 4 copies of the same game, and the game had to be 4-player compatible. That's a rare situation. It would be easier to get the band Witchfinder General back together than getting 4 people to play this thing. Then there's the Game Genie, so you can enter cheat codes. You'd think maybe, just maybe, with this being a portable console, there'd be a possibility that it would be the only console to not have Game Genie. But nope. What next? Is there a Game Genie for a Tiger game? So when you're playing in public, everybody will notice this big contraption mounted on the top. Just a big flag to say, hey everybody, I'm cheating. I do have to say, it's really cool that it has a spot that holds the code book. Now you have no excuse to misplace it. With all portable consoles, there is always that issue that when you're going on a trip, you always had to make sure to pack extra batteries. You know there's a battery called God Camel and Die Hard? Yippee double A, motherfucker. But you didn't need any of that, because the Game Boy had its own rechargeable battery pack. Sure, you had to buy it separately, but you had the option. But then comes all the weird third-party stuff like the Game Boy Solar Charger. Oh, come on, you can charge a Game Boy with sunlight? So I tried it. You're supposed to lay it out in the sun for up to 8 hours for a full charge. Then you slip your Game Boy in it, you plug the solar unit into the DC input on the side of the Game Boy, and it works. I have no idea how long it lasts, but it works. Well, this is an eco-friendly solution right here. I'm impressed. So when it comes to charging a Game Boy, there's many options. Is there anything else I don't know about? Is there a Game Boy Wind charger out there? No matter how you charge the Game Boy, the screen still looks like shit, and you can't play it in the dark. Well, here comes the newbie light. So apparently it sticks to the top of the Game Boy. So you just clip it on, how's that good? It works. You turn it on, you dim the room lights, or even play in total darkness, and it does the job. But it takes the same amount of batteries as the Game Boy, so in total, you'd need 8 AA batteries. Damn. Then there's the Light Boy. It's the same concept, except this one has a magnifying glass to make the screen appear larger. This one is hard to fit on. You really gotta shove it on there. This time, it only uses 2 batteries, but the light isn't working. Probably broken. Then there's the Light Magic. There must be hundreds of these things. It's the same exact thing as the Light Boy, but it attaches to the Game Boy much easier. Other than that, nothing's different. The light works, so here you can see it in action. It's a nice way to boost the visual appeal, but why not just make a new Game Boy model with a normal screen like everything else? Every version of these magnification light things seem to try to top the other. This one, called the Handy Boy, was released by STD? STD? Who in their right mind would name their game company STD?
Wait, STD is
Got
the,
the light
that
there.
means I
Oh,
didn't know
shit.
that!
Wow,
I
that
didn't
just flew
know
across
that!
the room.
Really?
Okay, wow. Oh. Wow, that really sucks. That really sucks. I broke that.
It was fresh out of the box, and it broke. Sure, it was old, but it seemed like it was hardly used, so I had to rush order a second one on eBay. This one I'm treating as delicately as possible.
Ooh.
This one's actually in worse condition, but the amount of use it got probably made it less stiff. This whole thing is ridiculous. Game Gear never did anything like...
So that's the
never
Game
mind.
Boy. なるほどね。
The good thing about this contraption is that it requires no extra batteries, but there's a light on it, so how does it power on?
Huh.
Well, somehow it taps into the Game Boy's own battery power. The back of the box shows it connecting to the DC port on the side of the Game Boy, but that's a DC input, right? Not an output. Is it both? I tried it, and as expected, it does not work. Not
Wait, why did they have a light? Why did they have a light though? To make a like clear vision? Why there's like a lamp on it? なんでライトが必要なの? Why do they need like extra attachment for the light? So you could play in the dark? Wait, I don't get it. No backlight? Wait, no backlight? Then how do you see the game? デフォの液晶だと暗くて見えない。Ah, so only you can see it at the like なるほど、昔の液晶は光らなかった。そうなの? Wait, is that possible? Huh? なるほど。Only underlight? What is underlight? なるほどね。そうなの? Wait, so like, if you try, so it's not like a phone or like iPad these days, like, it doesn't matter where you play at, right?
Game Boys back in the day had no lighting. If it was too bright, you couldn't see the screen.
Huh.
If it was too dark, you can't see the screen.
Really? マジでそうなんだ。あー、なるほどね。
Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance didn't have built-in lights. Not until the Game Boy Advance SP. All the competitors had lights, but
How
they
many
ate up
Game Boy do
way
you
more
have?
power.
あー、そうなんだ。
Not only that, but the moment I plug it in,
insane.
it shuts the Game Boy down. So this can't
That's
be
what Game
right.
Boy looks
Who
like.
knows? Maybe somebody out there has tried it this way and it actually does work, but mine doesn't. However, there is another way to power this thing. Yeah, they gave you a second option, as if they knew it sucked.
Huh.
Well, I wish I didn't have to do this, but
On the other day, I was watching
I don't
Twitter.
feel good, Henya.
I was watching Twitter and people saying it hits me when Henya said, "Oh, it's so nice that he kept his studio looks like very old to keep up with the vibe or something and then he was like, it's actually an old video, Henya, and that killed me like that." Ugh, like that. Yeah, I saw that comment. I saw that tweet on Twitter. Yeah. Oops, style. What? Oh, this one. This is 2017. I mean, probably the one I was talking about was maybe the video from 2008 or something, I guess.
yeah, look at that. You're supposed to stick it in the battery slot and lay the batteries over it so the contact points and the batteries sandwich it in place. And guess what? It works.
Yay!
Like shit. The light comes on and off at random. I have to constantly jiggle it around to get the light back on, but it keeps going off again. The screen magnification is alright, but as you can see, my glass really needs cleaning. Then there's the controller add-on. What's the point of this? In case you didn't like the controller that was already there? It was fine enough. Why do you need this? Does it add anything to the game? Is it any better? No, it's fucking horrible. It's all stiff and awkward. Who'd want to play it like this? The speakers are meant to amplify the sound in case you didn't think the Game Boy's speakers were loud enough. Because that's what you want if you're in public, right? Like if you're on a bus, you want everybody to hear what you're playing. But the speakers on this thing are actually less loud than the Game Boy speakers.
What?
Maybe they're full of dust. There was also the amplifier by Newbie, so the idea of making the Game Boy louder became its own line of experiments.
Huh.
But then came the ultimate project. If you want to get serious about your Game Boy,
Yeah.
then let me introduce
What
the booster.
booster?
This big-ass motherfucker is like
That's
the
no longer
mecha
a Game
combiner
Boy.
robot of the
That's a
Game Boy
Game Man.
family. It would be cool to see it fight a Game Gear. That would take me
Wow.
extra weeks. It takes C batteries,
What
but the Game
the
Boy gets
heck?
to tap into the booster's power by plugging the booster into its DC input the way it should.
Holy.
So at least they got the power situation worked out. It magnifies and lights the screen just like the others. It has a cover for the front with new controllers, but again, the Game Boy's controls were perfectly fine, so why would you need this? Just get rid of it. As for the speaker volume, when would you ever want it that loud? You only play it like a foot away from your face. There's a cartridge compartment on the back, just for convenience. It can hold 4 games,
Okay.
3 games,
Maybe not.
2. It
Alright,
holds
just
only
2.
2 games.
Just 2 games.
Overall, if you didn't like how lightweight and convenient the Game Boy was, and the portability is not something you find appealing, and you wanted something more bulky and awkward, then this is for you. Then there's the Game Boy camera. That's right, a camera
camera?
for the Game Boy.
For
And there's
what?
no complicated installation. You just
But
pop it
there's
in
no
like any
color.
game cartridge and snap a picture yourself. There's no way this would work. Let me try this.
Wow!
works.
It did work!
Wow. This is selfies before selfies. You can save your pictures to albums, you can mess around with them, you can even play built-in games, like this Space Invaders clone. Yeah, it's the most basic game you could possibly play, but hey, why not? For some reason, it has a suicide button that blows yourself up.
Why?
Then there's all kinds of weird random games. Ah, what the hell is that?
Who the
The
heck
more
is
you
that?
play around with this, the more strange things happen. But basically, it's a camera that's a Game Boy cartridge. Oh, I wonder if it works on Super Game Boy.
What is a Super Game Boy?
It does.
Ooh,
Holy
but like,
shit.
what the heck is
But the
Super
camera
Game
can't
Boy?
work, can it? Oh my, it actually works. But if you want to take a picture of yourself, you have to turn the Super Nintendo around. The bottom line, it could be done. But hey, look here, I can decorate my face.
Cool, nice. Mario! Okay, this is kind of cool, I
Now,
guess.
this is too much fun. Also, there is the Game Boy printer, so if you want to print the pictures, yeah, that can happen.
I barely see it. Holy crap. He needs to get more ink. I barely see it. There's not much ink inside. 見えないって. I can't see it.
Wow! Lots of these Game Boy accessories are rare. Some of the ones that I couldn't get my hands on are the Game Boy FM radio, the Work Boy, where you can plug in a keyboard and turn the Game Boy into a personal computer, just in case you didn't like using a monitor. Then there was the Hudson Soft Kiss Link, which allowed you to connect the Game Boy to the internet and download exclusive gaming content
that's
from
so
Hudson's
cool.
website. There was the Barcode Boy, which was a barcode scanner with games included, where you unlocked certain features by scanning barcodes found on cards and merchandise. There was
Wow.
the Game Boy Pocket Sonar.
What's
So
that?
if you bring a Game Boy on a fishing trip, you can detect fish up to 65 feet underwater.
What?
The Game Boy Color had a mobile phone adapter and a sewing machine. The Game Boy Color had
なんかこれあれだよね。なんか現代のさ、ナースさんが仕事で使ってるさ、やつみたいじゃない? Oh my gosh, that phone looks like a nowadays like nurse using those, isn't it? At least in Japan, I saw a nurse at the hospital using this kind of phone though. ね。ナースさんがさ、看護師さんこれ使ってるよね。ねえ。Yeah. I saw they're using this kind of type of phone.
a mobile phone adapter and a sewing machine.
Sewing
repeat, a sewing machine that came with a game cart where you choose a sewing pattern and then the machine sews the pattern.
Wow.
There were also Game Boy shoes. Big platform shoes with spaces to fit your Game Boy Color.
Look at a Pikachu holding the piece like, yay!
Yeah, you look so fucking awesome. But then, to top it off, the grand finale.
What is it?
I'm not even emotionally ready to tell you about this.
Nani?
So just sit back. Here it is. The Petty Sedate. This thing was intended for hospitals to help children relax when they're about to be put under for surgery
Cat
or
needs
medical
our nurse to
procedure.
wheel us back to bed
Essentially,
for our nap.
it's a pair of headphones that you plug into the Game Boy. You could probably plug it into any portable gaming console, but more importantly, it has a cup that goes over the child's mouth and releases the sleep gas or laughing gas or whatever it is they need. So it's the only gaming peripheral I know of that gasses you. Imagine being sedated while playing fucking Dr. Mario. What would that be like? Oh my god, I was gonna make up a bunch of fake shit at the end, like the Game Boy dog turd collector. But nothing I can make up can top this.
Thank
And
you
this
for
thing
being
was
there.
real. I mean, it didn't get
Arigato.
released, but it was
Thank you.
invented and patented. The Game Boy must have been the most multi-purpose thing in existence. Astronauts actually took it into space. It could withstand bomb blasts. You could take photos, print, sew, find fish, get sedated. I want to be sedated with the Game Boy. I want to be sedated with the Game Boy. Bam, bam, ba, bam, ba, bam, bam, ba, bam. I want to be sedated with the Game Boy.
Oh my goodness. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. That is so cool. That is so cool though. Holy. そんなあるんだ。